The shocking top 5 engines that were too dangerous for NASCAR. What if I told you the most powerful engines of the muscle car era weren't killed by competition, but by fear from the very companies that built them? Engines so extreme, so far ahead of their time, they were banned from NASCAR, silenced by corporate politics, and buried deep within Detroit's darkest secrets. These weren't failures, they were threats. Threats to profits, reputations, and the carefully crafted image of the American automotive industry. Blueprints vanished. Test cars were destroyed. Internal memos were scrubbed from history. But the legends lived on in whispers from retired engineers, in broken dyno records, and in the roar of the few survivors that slipped through the cracks. Today, we're opening the vault, uncovering 5 of the most forbidden power plants ever built. Engines they never wanted you to see. Which one do you think was the greatest threat? Comment below, subscribe to Muscle Car Masters, and join the hunt for the truth. Chevrolet's 396 Porcupine. Imagine an engine so advanced, so brutally powerful, that it had to be silenced not by failure, but by fear. That's the real story behind the Chevrolet 396 Porcupine Big Block. Unleashed midway through 1965, this beast of a V8, officially designated the L78, was rated at a conservative 375 horsepower. But those who drove or raced it knew better. In reality, it was pushing 425 horsepower, maybe even more. And with an aggressive solid lifter camshaft, 11-to-1 compression, rectangular port heads, and a Holley 4-barrel carb sitting on top, it was born to dominate. But just as fast as it roared onto the scene, it was quietly pushed aside. Why? Let's peel back the layers of this Detroit drama. The Porcupine nickname wasn't just for fun, it referred to its revolutionary canted valve cylinder heads, which pointed every which way like spines. This design allowed for massive airflow gains, making the engine breathe like a much larger displacement monster. It was cutting-edge tech, too cutting-edge, some might say. And here's where the story gets murky. GM had an internal policy that banned anything over 400 cubic inches in a mid-size car. The 396 barely squeezed in under the wire. But was that really the reason it was buried? NASCAR's homologation rules demanded that engines used on track be offered in production vehicles. But Chevrolet was focused on their new secret weapon, the 427. Was the 396 simply a stepping stone? Or was it a threat to GM's own power hierarchy? There are whispers of a shelved high-performance variant, a so-called Phase 2 L78, with even hotter internals. But documentation? Gone. Some say it was lost. Others suspect it was deliberately destroyed. Meanwhile, the 396 quietly laid the groundwork for legends. The 427, the 454, and even the monstrous 8.1-liter Vortec used in trucks decades later. Chevrolet's 427 Mystery Motor. Picture this. You stumble into a dusty, padlocked warehouse on the outskirts of Detroit. Hidden under decades of grime is a cast-iron monster, tagged X427 Experimental, property of GM, destroy after test. What you're looking at could be one of the last remnants of a forbidden legend, the 427 Mystery Motor. The engine that was too powerful, too advanced, and too dangerous to be allowed into the world. In late 1962, while Chrysler was finalizing their 426 Hemi, and Ford was working in secret on the 427 SOHC Camry, General Motors prepared their retaliation. But unlike their rivals, GM did it in complete silence. No press releases, no brochures, just a handful of engineers burning the midnight oil behind locked doors at Milford Proving Grounds. What they built wasn't just another stroked 409, it was a completely new species, the Mark II mystery motor. Its radical canted porcupine heads offered unmatched airflow, setting the stage for the big block revolution to come. The mystery motor first roared to life publicly in 1963 at Daytona, tucked under the hood of Junior Johnson's Impala. The result? It stunned everyone. Insiders whispered of 550-plus horsepower. Ford and Chrysler were caught flat-footed. But just as the mystery motor was poised to rewrite racing history, it vanished. General Motors pulled the plug overnight. Every engine was recalled. Some say they were destroyed. Key documents? Gone without a trace. Test cars were dismantled. The official explanation? Compliance with the AMA's ban on factory-backed racing. But the real story? Many believe GM's own internal politics shut it down. The mystery motor was so good, it threatened the sacred Corvette's status, and that made it a liability. Fast forward nearly 50 years. In 2010, one of the few surviving mystery motors was dyno-tested 440 horsepower, untuned, and still pulling strong. Engine builders now believe that with period-correct tuning, this power plant could have pushed well over 550 horsepower back in 1963. This wasn't just an engine, it was a revolution, a secret weapon that never got the chance to go to war. So why did GM bury it? Was it fear, ego, or something darker? Some say a few prototypes are still out there hidden in barns, sealed in forgotten crates. If you've ever seen one, you're part of an elite circle. Because this engine wasn't just fast, it was forbidden. Pontiac 421. This isn't just the story of an engine. It's the story of a corporate civil war, a rebellion so effective, so fast, and so feared that General Motors didn't just shut it down, they tried to erase it. In the early 1960s, Pontiac wasn't seen as a performance leader. It was supposed to be the brand for middle-class families. But a group of rogue engineers inside Pontiac had other plans, and they built a monster, the 421 Super Duty. What began as a bored-out 389/58 was quickly transformed into a fire-breathing, track-dominating machine. With forged steel internals, lightweight aluminum pistons, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and a compression ratio of up to 12.0 to 1, the 421 SD was rated at 405 to 465 horsepower. But ask anyone who raced against it back in the day, and they'll tell you it was making well over 500 horsepower, and doing it reliably. In NASCAR, on the drag strip, and anywhere else it showed up, the Super Duty was untouchable. Fireball Roberts and Joe Weatherly drove SD-powered Pontiacs to national glory. And that's when GM panicked. In January of 1963, GM issued a sweeping internal ban. No more factory racing. No more Super Duty. But Pontiac didn't go down quietly. According to multiple insider accounts, GM raided Pontiac's engineering shops. Blueprints were confiscated. Prototypes were destroyed. One warehouse storing SD parts mysteriously went up in flames. A GM memo at the time warned that any executive caught violating the ban would be terminated. What was once Pontiac's greatest engineering triumph had become a political liability. Why? Simple. Chevy was losing. Badly. The Super Duty was outperforming everything Chevrolet had on the track. And for the top brass at GM, especially those guarding the Corvette's crown, that was unacceptable. Pontiac was never supposed to be the hero of GM's performance legacy. But you can't kill an idea. In 1964, Pontiac quietly launched the GTO. It was smaller, lighter, and technically based on a 389. But underneath, it was steeped in Super Duty DNA. The cam profiles, the intake geometry, the tuning, it all traced back to the 421. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing, built to slip past GM's racing restrictions and bring muscle to the masses. So next time you see a clean GTO on the street, ask yourself, is that just a muscle car? Or is it a survivor of GM's most infamous internal war? This wasn't just an engine that got banned, it got buried under GM's own turf war. Ford's forbidden 427 Cammer. What if I told you Ford built a weapon so advanced, so devastating, that NASCAR didn't just reject it, they erased it from the field before it could ever fire a shot? That's exactly what happened in 1964, when Ford created the legendary 427 SOHC Cammer, an overhead cam beast that would shake the foundations of American motorsport. Born in just 90 days, this engine was never meant to be subtle. It was designed with one goal: kill the Chrysler Hemi. Based on the proven 427 FE block, the Cammer added single overhead cams, hemispherical combustion chambers, and shaft-mounted roller rockers technology that felt like it belonged in Le Mans, not NASCAR. Ford claimed it could produce 616 horsepower in single 4-barrel trim, but with dual quads and full race setup, it made 657 horsepower at 7,500 RPM in 1965. That was enough to terrify everyone in Daytona's front office. And so, before it ever ran a competitive lap, NASCAR banned it, labeling the overhead cam design too exotic, and fearing it would ignite a tech war that smaller teams couldn't follow. But the Cammer wasn't going to die in a boardroom. Ford simply moved the battlefield to the drag strips, and the results were apocalyptic. Connie Kalitta famously broke the 200 mph barrier with a Cammer-powered dragster. Others would push supercharged variants past 2,500 horsepower. The engine was so dominant, it became a cult weapon in top fuel and funny car racing. Yes, it had flaws. The Cammer's 6-foot serpentine timing chain could stretch under extreme RPM, throwing off valve timing. But racers quickly ditched the chain for gear drives, solving the issue and unlocking the engine's full fury. What started as a rushed counterstrike became one of the most iconic, feared, and banned engines of all time. So why wasn't it allowed to compete on NASCAR's biggest stage? Was it really about fairness or fear? What documents never saw the light of day? Who tested prototypes that never raced? The truth may still be hidden in Ford's vaults, but one thing is certain. They banned it before it could win, but it won anyway, in the quarter mile. Chevy's secret weapon, the 292 Inline-Six. It's the engine almost no one talks about, but the few who know whisper about it like a secret passed between spies. Forget V8s for a second. Let's talk about the Chevrolet 292 Inline-Six, an engine so overbuilt, so underhyped, and so deeply buried by GM that it's become something of a mechanical ghost. Rated officially at just 165 horsepower, the 292 was marketed as a workhorse engine for trucks. But what if I told you that number was a deliberate lie? Let's start with the hardware. The 292 had a massive 4.125-inch stroke, 7 main bearings, and a forged steel crankshaft that could handle abuse far beyond what it was ever allowed to show on paper. It was built not just to run, it was built to survive a war. Dyno testing of untouched stock blocks regularly shows over 200 horsepower, and builders today easily push them to 450 plus with modern tuning, even on a stock bottom end. So why would GM cripple an engine with that much potential? The answer lies in cold corporate strategy. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, GM made far more profit per unit on their small block V8s. A high-performance 6-cylinder that could match or outperform those V8s? That would cannibalize sales and, worse, undermine the entire marketing empire built around V8 power. So, the 292 was deliberately suppressed. Factory service manuals included odd warnings against certain performance modifications, restrictive camshaft profiles, weak exhaust manifolds, and neutered intakes were all signs of corporate sabotage. But here's where the real conspiracy starts. There are persistent rumors that Chevrolet had developed a high output, fuel-injected 292 variant code named Typhoon 6, destined for a special run Camaro. Prototypes were built. Internal memos flew. Then, nothing. The project vanished, shelved quietly without explanation. Documents are missing. Employees who worked on it refused to talk even decades later. Yet the 292 refused to die. In the late 60s and early 70s, dirt track racers and NHRA stock eliminator drivers quietly used bone stock 292 blocks to humiliate V8 competition. Jack Reynolds famously won 3 straight events in a 292-powered Nova until NHRA conveniently rewrote the rulebook. Today, the 292 lives on in secrecy. Collectors disguise them under stock valve covers. A subculture of engine builders protects them like relics of forbidden technology. Because the truth is, this wasn't just a truck motor. It was a weapon GM never wanted you to unlock. So, what ties all these outlaw engines together? It's not just horsepower. It's not just innovation. It's the fact that they were too good, too raw, too radical, and too real for the suits in the boardroom. These engines weren't silenced by failure. They were shut down by fear. Behind every one of them is a trail of missing dyno data, erased prototypes, and projects canceled without a trace. They were threats not to the competition, but to GM's hierarchy, Ford's PR department, and NASCAR's control. And yet, they live on in garages, in memories, and in whispers shared between true gearheads. Which one do you believe was the greatest legend that never got its full chance? Drop it in the comments. We want to hear your stories. And if you love uncovering the secrets Detroit tried to bury, subscribe to Muscle Car Masters, where the truth always starts at wide open throttle.